Well, you would not believe the weekend that I've had. Oh, mercy. So 2 months ago, when I realized that I was coming here, I booked a moving company. And about 3 days ago, or 3 days before the move, they called me to confirm the start time. And so we confirmed. And then 9 o'clock on Friday morning, no one showed up. And so I gave them a half an hour of grace. And at 9:30, I tried calling, and the phone was disconnected. So I ravaged through my phone, found a moving company that said they would move me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a lot more money. A lot more. And so I said, okay, booked it. So 2 o'clock they were coming. Enter new tenant with her parents and family in U-Haul. And thank God I'm a minimalist and was organized, because she could actually move all of her stuff into the apartment. So this apartment is jacked full of stuff. And there's this a mountain of my stuff in the kitchen. And so she moves all her stuff in. She's lovely and gracious. And 2 o'clock comes, and no one shows. And so I call them, and 2 o'clock turns to 4:30, turns to 6, turns to 7:30, and at 8:30 on Friday night, they called me to tell me they had to cancel. I'm laughing because I don't have anything else to do. And so I pack Kitty in the car, I hand bomb a bunch of boxes and drive in to the church here, because the apartment office is shut down, and drop a whole bunch of boxes off here, put Kitty in office where it's nice and warm and cozy for him, and I come back, go back to Hamilton, and hand bomb another load, and then drive it in the morning. And as I'm driving, as I'm back in Hamilton waiting for my friend who actually managed to find a cargo van that was available for that day, a zip car. As I was waiting for my friend to arrive with this cargo van, my next door neighbor comes along and says, what's going, I thought you were moving yesterday. And I told him what happened, and he pulled his car in, and we loaded it up, and he helped us move. And thanks be to God, we were mainly done by about 4 in the afternoon yesterday. And so as I was processing the gospel back up to the altar, I was checking my pocket to make sure I still had my sermon notes in there, because that's just the kind of weekend it's been. So there you have it. Yes, and so I'm going to talk this morning, and we're going to unpack a couple of themes that we find in the text that we read from today. There'll be some talk about authority and some talk about self-emptying love and relationship. And so if we start with the authority piece, what we look at is, in this gospel, we see this kind of brilliant, slightly humorous interaction between the elitists of the temple, the entitled folks of the temple, and Jesus. So they publicly confront Jesus on what authority that he's doing the things that he's doing. On what authority is he teaching this new grace-filled teaching of relationship, or close relationship with God the Father? On what authority was he going around and healing people, touching the lepers and making them clean, healing the demon-possessed, those struggling? On what authority was he moving beyond the social constructs of their culture, stepping out of those holy spaces into this space where he's eating and drinking with tax collectors and prostitutes and the unclean and those deemed outside of holiness? On what authority was he barging into temples and throwing tables over and driving marketers out of the temple? So really, in what authority was Jesus doing the things that he was doing? And we meet what I call trickster Jesus. I love this part of Jesus. When he's confronted with a question, he turns it on its head, kind of flips things around in this way that's kind of insightful and humorous often. And here he says, if you tell me one thing, I'll answer your question. And so he says to the scribes, where does John the Baptist's baptism originate from? Does it come from a human authority, or does it come from God? And of course, the scribes can't answer that question, publicly anyway, because they're darned if they do and they're darned if they don't. If they say it's from heaven, then Jesus' response is clearly going to be, well, then why didn't you believe? And if the scribes say, well, it's from human origin, well, then what about those crowds of people that believe that John is a prophet? So I'm not going to say that Jesus doesn't answer him, or them, but Jesus doesn't answer them, really? And leaves us with this question. By what authority do we do the things that we do? That's a wonderful question, really. And it's not just a question for Jesus of Nazareth who walked this planet 2,000 years ago, but a question for us as the church and for us as individual beloved children of God. Where do we find our strength? Who leads us and who directs us? I keep on stepping on this squeaky piece of floor, so I'm going to move here. I'm like, that's insanity. Yeah, so what authority do we live and move and have our being? Because the scribes were looking for a top-down answer. They were at the top, and they wanted to know on what authority he was coming in. And Jesus answered with an alongside authority. Even with them, he had this insight and clarity that he could enter into their relationship with God and with this crowd of people and play with it. And so I think that is the answer there. And so when I think about me coming into this space now with all of you and into a position of some authority, I feel like it would be wrong for me not to say, this is kind of my philosophy about authority. Because the only authority I feel like I can walk into this space with is an authority called the Paraclete, the Spirit of the Comforter, the Advocate, and the one who comes alongside of us in our faith journeys through the good, the bad, and the ugly of being the people of God together. And it's not that I won't make decisions or I'm bad at it, but for me, making decisions that impact all of us together here are decisions that have to come out of relationship with you, where I know what's going on, where I know you and care for you, and out of that place of trust, make decisions that really allow us all to step into the Spirit of God. And so I'm excited about doing that work with you, of being with you in relationship, and gaining that or building that trust with you. But that whole coming alongside piece leads us into the second piece, which is this self-emptying love and relationship that we're called to. And it's one of those things that for me, I kind of get my back up a little bit sometimes when I hear this, we need to empty ourselves, because as one who often has a shame complex in my mind, the idea of saying, I'm not worthy, it reminds me of Wayne's World a bit, it's in an unhealthy way leads me to this place of just feeling worthless. And I actually don't think that that's what Jesus is calling us to here. But this self-emptying love is one that says, when I come alongside of you, the gift that we have for one another is ourselves, is our stories, is our experiences of Jesus, that have changed us and deepened our trust. And that coming alongside means that we offer ourselves to each other. And the only thing that makes that work in the church is if we all do it together. And that is so countercultural. And that is where the light and transforming power of God flourish and touch the world around us. I often have stories engaged as I am unpacking Gospels and readings and preaching, and I had a story come up that I'd like to end with all of you. And it's kind of a notion of, to say that we are going to be in self-emptying ministry together does not mean that we are going to be empty. It means that we are in this space where we give all of ourselves to each other and to God together. And in that moment, we're all doing it. And that means that we're all cared for too. And so, before I entered parish ministry, I was a chaplain in a hospital. And it was a year that changed my life, I have to say. And there was this one story that pulled out of me when I was preparing for this. And I was called to a bedside of a woman who was actively dying. So she was in the last of her life. And I went into her room, and I was called in to sit with her and to be in vigil with her by her mother and her son who had to leave for a while to get some rest. And she was a young woman. She was about my age. And her son was about 10 or 11. And as I sat by her bedside, I looked around the room and I saw this book that was sitting there. And I pulled the book out, and it was one of those books where you push the button and the voice comes on. And it was the voice of a little boy reading the story. And I sat with her and went through the page and through the whole story where her son was reading the story that she had read to him as a child, and that was his gift to her in her sickness and in the end of her life. And in that moment, I just felt like, that self-emptying love of a parent, to have that brought back to her in the last minutes of her life because she passed away that night, is kind of what this spirit is talking about. We empty ourselves, and it comes back to us. The life of Jesus comes back to us. It was quite a touching and profound moment for me, where I kind of realized in that moment the difference between offering a cure and offering healing. Because oftentimes I resort to wanting to offer a cure to someone, but rather I'm called to offer the space of healing. Like, I wish I could take away that sickness and that she would not have died and that she would be with her son, but instead the spirit of Paraclete called me to this space where healing and integration happened, and where as this woman's life was slipping away, her son read a comforting book over her. And so as I'm here now with all of you, thank you for the very warm and generous welcome. Amidst the chaos of my move, there was beer. Thank you, Patty. I had a neighbor and a friend find a van and help me move. And there were these intense moments of grace that lead me to this place now where it feels right to be here with you. And I'm really excited to do the work of getting to know you, hearing your stories, and hearing what's important to you, how God has touched you and changed your life. Amen.